I've been out to sea in my mind since I was a kid. Songs rambling round my head, taking me across the world and back home again. Home in the stillness, I got curious about other people's creative practice and how they made a life in the arts. So I invited some of Australia's most interesting artists over to the shed for a conversation. All right, here we go. Things have changed a little bit, which has been a good scene. The big powerboats, but old Pablo, he's used to coming off the beach. He's an organic kind of character. Today I'm headed off to catch up with Abby Dobson. I remember being backstage at Bluesfest, hearing Abby's voice floating on the wind. It struck me so deeply I thought, am I listening to Australia's greatest voice? I'm looking forward to seeing where this conversation takes us. Hello, Abby Dobson. Welcome to the Fisherman's Shed. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you, Mark.
I wanted to ask you, what's your first memory of songwriting and finding a voice? Whether that be singing or writing poems or writing songs. Where did that begin for you?
Songwriting kind of came slowly to me, but I took up writing when I was I took up journaling when I was about 14.
Right. The classic age.
Yeah, you know, I like cigarettes and journaling and
right.
beach and park down the end of my street and a lot of angst and the feeling that people just didn't understand me.
Yeah.
So that's when I took up kind of journaling, and that I really have been mostly journaling ever since, with some years here and there where I had a break. But
did you play an instrument at that time when you were 14 or?
Yeah, I took up, I'm the youngest of five, and so we all played guitar.
Right.
So my brothers and my sister we had a couple of guitars in our house, and everybody played a bit. So they would teach me, you know,
the old classics.
A, D, G and C. And,
that's all you need,
and,
a few chords and the truth.
That's right. And so we had some kind of Beatles and Dylan and Cat Stevens songbooks, and so I just went through all of those to see which ones had just those four chords.
Yeah.
And then, I played since I was like maybe 11 or something.
Okay.
And then also when the high school that I went to, everybody played a nylon string guitar. We would just go to each other's places on the train with a black vinyl soft case, zip-up case with a nylon string guitar.
Yeah.
And, you know, sit around at each other's places and smoking and playing folk songs.
So what point did it go from journaling into actually, you know, writing your own songs? Did that come a lot later, or when did that sort of start to form into things?
Well, I also kind of loved poetry as well. I loved a rhyme, and I've always kind of loved wordplay. And so, even in primary school, I loved poems and poetry. Not sophisticated poetry, but I kind of started to become enchanted by words then. I was actually just thinking this week, I remember there was this song called, maybe it was a poem, called The Jabberwocky, Beware the Jabberwock, my friend.
Right, I don't know.
And that was kind of, was that it? 'Twas brillig and the slithy toads did gyre and gimble in the wave. It was it was the first kind of poem that I'd heard that didn't make sense, and yet it had kind of a rhythm and an enchanting pull. And so I think that was kind of perhaps my first memory of being kind of enchanted by words.
Yeah.
Songwriting happened a lot later. In fact, after so I sang through school, but I wasn't writing songs. I was writing poems and journaling. And then it wasn't until I met Dean Manning in like 1989, and he was a budding songwriter, and we both worked in advertising.
Right.
And I met him when I was working at his office, and he was in his office because he worked in like Mojo, which was a musical advertising agency where they wrote jingles and songs.
Right.
And I met him, and a friend visited me, and I said, I see that guy over there. I'm going to know him a really long time. And then he asked me out, and we got together, and 6 months later he bought me a ticket overseas, round the world ticket overseas, and so we travelled and started playing music.
So how old would have you been at about that time, do you think?
Well, when we travelled, I think I was like 22.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So pretty formative kind of time.
Yeah.
And you'd obviously been singing all through that period of time.
Yeah, I loved to sing, and I played guitar and sang at school, and but it always was like a hobby.
Right.
And yet I didn't know what to do in my career. I had this great, kind of yawning chasm about what I would do with my future.
Right.
But, I have played...
So music at that point wasn't even on the radar as something that you were even looking at to do in a career?
No, and certainly wasn't encouraged.
Right.
And I didn't know anybody who'd done that, and my mother certainly didn't think that was a clever idea.
A real job.
No. So, so yeah, it was just this kind of hobby that I did, and so it took me I had quite a kind of circuitous path to find that. And I also, like when I left school, I secretly applied for this School of Performing Arts that had just opened up in Lismore.
Yeah.
And I got into that, but then my mother wouldn't let me go. So
as a singer, is that sort of what you were interested in doing at that particular point? Was it singing or acting, or what was it for you?
I don't know. Like I didn't really know, but I did love to sing. Like it was obvious that I loved to sing, but yeah, I was also interested in acting, and I think that show Fame, the original series, had been pretty inspiring. So I thought, wow, like you're allowed to, just like sing your emotions? Like, is that something that you can do as a job?
So you somehow found your way into advertising. And
well, I first worked in film production, and then I worked in advertising, and then I met Dean, and then we went travelling overseas, and he was a closet songwriter, and I was a closet singer, and so we travelled to Greece and Paris and London, New York, and busked and played in bars, but we were singing kind of a bunch of covers and his songs, and then it wasn't until, so we did that for like a year and a half, and it wasn't until we came back to Australia, and gosh, it's so old, it's so long ago.
I know. So it was the time with Dean that basically started to unlock this as an idea for you, both singing and writing. Were you writing together, or was he writing and you were just singing, or what was the dynamic of the relationship?
Yeah, he was writing and I was singing.
Yeah.
But I was writing. I was kind of doing other kind of writing, but not. I didn't quite know how to do songwriting yet.
Right.
So, and he was very kind of prolific, and so there was no shortage of kind of material, just to keep going. So it really wasn't until it kind of I did write songs on the Leonardo's Bride albums, but he was the main songwriter, and I kind of thought that I probably wouldn't be very good at it, like because he seemed so confident, and I didn't have that kind of confidence. So it wasn't really until Leonardo's Bride broke up that I.
That is just amazing to me. Because your solo work is incredible.
Oh, thank you.
So it's fascinating. I knew Dean wrote a lot of the material, but I was unaware of that you weren't as involved in that part of the process of those songs, you know. And it's interesting that wasn't a space open for you in that period of time in your career.
Not really, no. I think I was so young. It's been a kind of a theme throughout my life that my confidence kind of arrives after me. Do you know? Wow. So I suppose I've always kind of had a creative urge, but not a great kind of creative front to put myself forward or to push my own agenda or anything like that. So I've just kind of had this kind of gentle unfolding.
I mean, your voice is so central to those songs, and the way that they're interpreted and the feeling and the emotion that kind of comes out of all of that sort of period of time. Did it take a while for you to discover your voice the way that we sort of know it from that as early stages of Leonardo's Bride, or was that sort of just innate in the way that you sang from the early stages, or?
I had obviously kind of a tuneful voice. You know, people would say that I could sing, and I loved it. It wasn't really until we even recorded, I think, 2 EPs before we did our first full-length album, the one that had Even When I'm Sleeping on it. And up until that point I'd been, interested in the voice and what it could do, but it wasn't really until I kind of had a portal open when I was about 24 or something, and it sounds more dramatic than it was. It wasn't obvious really at the time what was happening, but I just kind of, a spiritual dimension kind of opened up for me.
Right.
And I was seeing, healers and spiritual, sages and, I was always a kind of a seeker. And then I started seeking in that kind of realm.
Right.
And I saw this lady, this kind of healer, and we were just about to record Angel Blood, the first Leonardo's Bride album. And she said to me, your voice could be complete, something very powerful if you brought in all the parts of you, like your spirit as well as your kind of worldly self.
Yeah, right.
And it just came at the right time, because I knew exactly what she was saying, and it was almost like all I had to do was just go, oh, right, and I just kind of was really able to access that, and it was just waiting for me.
This bigger idea in you, it's not just the chops and singing, it's this otherworldly connection point or something.
The connection point. So it was just if you incorporate your spirit as well into what you're doing, then it could be something else.
That's so evident in those songs. I mean, when you listen to Even When You're Sleeping, I mean, to me that's one of the greatest vocal performances in the country. It's just amazing, and it just touches people on so many levels, and it's the song, but it's actually your delivery of that song.
Thank you.
Incredible. So there you go. So right, so that's interesting.
Well, it's the first time I kind of really the idea of setting your intention before you record or perform, or really.
So how I'm really fascinated. So when, I guess, did you feel that you found your way, you felt, on that first record, and through these conversations, how did you approach your actual recording sessions for your vocals? Like, what was there something that you would do in the booth that would be different? Like, what were you doing? You know, is there something you're doing about centering yourself, or what did a day look like in the studio for you recording those vocal sessions?
Well, interestingly, for that album, I was also getting really sick, right. So I didn't know then, but I was so tired, and I was getting all of these kind of aches and body aches, and so there was a lot happening kind of in my inner and outer world, I suppose. And so I think I kind of learned, I think maybe being the youngest child and having older siblings who were all kind of quite wild and would like, I could see, you know, I got to watch like what was a good thing to do and what was not such a great thing to do. And so I suppose I kind of learned maybe early that like how intrinsic your energy is into, I don't normally talk about this stuff, so I haven't really got kind of a language, but I think I kind of must have learned quite early like how important the energy that you come with is. Like it's got to be more than just the technique.
Right.
So before I would record or do a gig or something, I would always make sure that I went for a walk in nature, or I don't think I'd learnt how to meditate then, but that came a bit later. But I just kind of always felt like I wanted to kind of be a clear channel.
Right. When you're singing in the studio and when you're singing live, is there something that you're actively thinking in your mind as you're approaching the song? Are you thinking through the lyrics and what those lyrics are about? Are you just trying to be present in the moment with people? Are you sending out something to the audience? Like, is there something particular that's happening or a thing that you can do in that, you know?
Yeah, good question. No one's ever really asked me that. But in the early days, I think in the early days, like I felt the power of what was happening and that people were very moved by the material, and so I felt very responsible and like that I needed to be like this kind of healing portal.
Right.
So I took it quite seriously, and that really just that I wanted to be like a channel of love. Like it was pretty kind of simple, but in order to be that, then I felt like I needed to be very present and in the moment, and also have warmed up so that I could kind of lose myself and not be worrying, am I going to get that note because I haven't warmed up and my voice is scratchy or whatever. So kind of just preparing the instrument and then the spirit, I suppose. So it was actually quite a lot. And that I was also getting kind of very unwell. I ended up being diagnosed with chronic fatigue and rheumatoid arthritis at 26 or 7.
There would have been a huge amount of pressure on you, I would imagine, at that point, because at that point you were signed to, you know, a Mushroom, it's a label, a big label, and there was money floating around. I guess back in the day, studio time was expensive.
That's right.
So there's a lot of pressure, I would imagine, that you would have had on you. At that point.
And I was kind of a yes girl as well. I said yes to everything. Right. You know, I wanted to please the people who, you know, we were working for, and I wanted to be polite to everybody who was around. And so but I just thought, you know, but love is a magic pudding. You know, if I'm just kind of this, you know, calibrating to love and just wanting to give love, then I mean, I'm sounding more saintly than I was, but I had this kind of feeling like I was very surprised when I got completely exhausted, because I was like, I didn't think love works like that.
Yeah.
But I gradually kind of got more and more depleted, and so it was really only after Leonardo's Bride that I took the pressure off myself that I was responsible for everybody in the room.
Right.
And that I had to reach even the people up the back. Like I had this kind of, I don't know, it was kind of almost like a fervour
Right.
in a way that I was responsible to heal the room.
Right.
And now I don't feel that at all. You know,
Yeah.
and now for a long time I haven't felt that at all.
And that's been probably a big release, I would imagine.
Yeah. Since I've been in my French band, Baby and Lulu, which is like a 6-piece band and completely different to anything I'd done before. And, you know, we sing in harmony in French, me and Lara Goodridge, Lulu. And that is just pure fun and joy, as well as passionate and beautiful as well, and deep. But, since I've been in that band, I was just like, I'm just going to do it for my fun. Like, this is just for me, and you're all welcome. Like, and whoever wants,
quite a shift,
wants
isn't it?
Yeah, it was a great, a great relief.
Yeah, the
you do
weight.
need a long career to kind of work shit out, don't you?
To see it all roll.
Yeah.
So, you know, sort of just circling back to that period of time of that first record with it, when you were in the mic and you sang that song, even when you sleep, when you actually went in and did that vocal take, do you remember that?
I do.
Do you remember,
I do.
Did you think, that's just something special, or was it after, post listening back to it, or what was around that for you?
It was we were recording with the band. It was summer in Sydney, and we were recording in a place called Megaphon, which had these wonderful wooden floorboards. It was like an old warehouse.
Awesome.
And it was we did these sessions with Justin Stanley, who was producing, and a beautiful engineer called Keith Cooper. Yeah. And Keith was really he was kind of a magical kind of guy. Right. So at that stage I wasn't telling anybody what I was doing, that's for sure, but I was just quietly working on making my energy like as kind of clear as I could. And he helped facilitate that and wanted to put like fairy lights. You know, I dressed the vocal booth up and so the whole session was actually kind of a bit magical. Like Howler, the drummer, we were kind of wanting him to just like really hit the snare just like half a beat later, and so he got stoned in order to do that. And we were kind of barefoot, and it was just Justin Stanley. The song was actually quite different, and originally, and Justin just kind of helped me find a way to lean into a couple of places that were more soulful, and from that it all just opened up for me, like how I could approach the whole thing in a more soulful way. And
the space it's that whole thing about finding that space around that vocal. There's a lot of space around it. It's so supportive, and then it gives you the space to kind of go out and do your thing, you know. But
I also had a map of the world pinned up because I wanted to my intention was to just love the world. So I really kind of was the first time I was really kind of, and I've never, definitely never told anybody that stuff
that's awesome.
Until, well, I haven't really discussed it actually properly ever, but no one's asked. But that was what
awesome.
I was doing.
That's it. I can, it sort of makes sense to me when I listen to it. I think about, even with my own work, is that when I feel like I'm sort of sending something out, I find myself in a more powerful spot. And when I'm overthinking, or I can hear myself thinking when I listen back to things, when I sort of remove the thinking part and it's sort of like a bigger idea than myself. That's where I tend to touch into things. They were recorded live, or was it?
It was recorded live.
And so those vocal takes are live takes, or did you go back and redo those, or how do you remember what it was?
I think I might have overdubbed the vocal again, but same day, just after the band take, I think.
And do you remember that moment when you finished the take? Is it predominantly a single take, or is it sort of cut from a few different spots?
I think it's probably cut from a few, I would do that. But I remember going that night, I was seeing this guy who lived in a warehouse across town, and I went to his place after the session, and I took a desk tape And I remember playing it to him in this warehouse, and I remember thinking, it was almost like, look what I found today. It wasn't really, it wasn't like, look what I did, but it was almost like, look what I found. Like I found this beautiful thing. So I knew it was beautiful and had a something, just like you said, the space in it and the whole performance was, I think everybody did the bass line in that song is just like exquisite. Yeah. And I think everybody just was so restrained. It was a magic afternoon, and I remember playing it. I didn't know it would be successful or whatever because, you know, we were in the midst of grunge.
Yeah.
So this kind of gentle love song was certainly not something that was indicating, you know, our success at all. But I knew it was beautiful.
Was that always a song that you guys thought, this is the song for that record? Were you going through the process, or was it someone else at the label that found it? You know, you always hear these stories about bands not necessarily recognising their singles. And was that what happened for you guys, or was it always identified by you guys as being, you know, a standout track, or how did you see that?
After we recorded it, we knew that it was beautiful, but it almost didn't make the record. Amazing. And Justin Stanley actually said, no, keep that one. Like it was very... kind of syncopated when Dean wrote it. It was, don't be confused by my apparent lack of ceremony. Wow. My mind is clear. It was kind of like that.
Wow.
So, no, it didn't. It needed shepherding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, you make this record, comes out into the universe, and it explodes and becomes, you know, Song of the Year, and arias and all sorts of things come from this moment. How did sort of life change for you at that particular point? Did it change much? What did it look like for you during that period of time?
It was just kind of, it was like we were hard, even before it was successful, we were a hard-working band. We were playing a lot. We've had a great manager, Norman Parkhill, who had kind of was managing the Bad Loves at the same time, and so, you know, we toured with them, which was just beautiful. So we got these audiences, and we initially signed to Polygram, but then for just like a, what do they call them? They're just like a budding, like a little
like
deal.
A developmental
kind of deal. Yeah. So we put an EP out through them, and then we couldn't actually sign the full-blown contract because it was so awful. And so, you know, like, I don't know how we had the balls to say no, but we said no to that contract. And then fortunately Mushroom stepped in, and they were just beautiful. Like, it was just magic. Like, everybody who worked there were fans, and we travelled, you know, but we worked hard. Like, we were always on the road. I don't remember ever having a day off. I didn't go to any friends' weddings or birthdays or anything. So it was relentless.
Which is probably, would you say now, reflecting back, about partly the sickness and those things coming out of just being in intense, like, people don't always understand it, but, you know, so many artists, when they get to this point, and then there's just demands. Like, I remember Megan Washington talking about how she was just on the road non-stop and then got really sick at the end of a run, you know. Is that sort of what it was like for you? Like, it's an intensity to life on the road like that. It
was all of those things, but it was also, I mean, not petitioning blame in any way, but my relationship with Dean, because we were a couple initially, and when that song was written, and by the time we went to record, I think by the time we recorded anything, maybe, we weren't a couple anymore.
Wow.
And so
how does that work?
Not well.
I was going to say that
it's not ideal.
Yeah.
No, it's not ideal.
Yeah.
But we had this, you know, we were in this kind of,
this thing that was happening.
This thing that had a life force that was just moving. And so, but a very, very strained relationship. went along with it. So it wasn't really strained when we were together, but then once we broke up, it became very strained, and that added a lot of pressure, as well as the schedule. But it was a big time. I mean, we kind of loved each other as well. It wasn't just awful, but it was problematic.
I can imagine, because I mean, you would have gone through, I guess, being recognised, all of those kind of things, the touring life, and then moving into Open Sesame. What was your headspace in after? Was there a huge amount of pressure on you at that point to kind of repeat what you'd done on the one before, and here you go into Open Sesame? I mean, Open Sesame sonically is a really beautiful and interesting sounding record. I remember at the time being in high school and loving it,
right.
And Sonic, and I mean,
I just listened to that record just last week for the first time in, I don't know, like I actually haven't been able to listen to that record since we made it, because I was in such a difficult place at that point, and I was so unwell that I couldn't even, I could just lie down, and when I'd get up to do takes, I'd get up, but I just had to lie down everywhere, and I was so unwell, and my body, I had a lot of arthritis everywhere, and so I wasn't thriving, but I was still pretty focused on what I had to do, so I was still in it, right. But it was all I could do to just tune out everybody else and just trying to focus on trying to do it. But that was really hard, and I wasn't particularly happy at that point. So it was only listening to it last week that I went, oh, this is beautiful.
Yeah.
Blue Gone Green, a beautiful song on there.
Absolutely.
Some gorgeous songs that it was too painful to ever listen to or appreciate. Yeah. At the time. So it's nice to, again, isn't it nice to have this kind of long
stretch of
life.
time to look back at that period of time and see what it was. So the band, I guess, at that point, was sort of winding down. Is that how it felt to you, or was it more just an internal
It was probably an internal thing, but the boys were obviously troubled by me not being the girl that I was,
right.
The girl that said yes to everything. I was having to kind of really limit what I could do,
right.
And we were offered a tour overseas, and I was so unwell. I could just do the shows and then lie down, and we got offered another tour like while we were there, but I was like, I can't. I've only got enough to do what I said I would do. I can't stay another month here. I'm dying here. And so they were very troubled by the change in the dynamic, because I was no longer the girl that said yes. So, yeah, it was a kind of broody time, and the record company were changing hands, and it was bought by a festival, and so our people changed, and they wanted us to do remixes of everything, dance remixes, and it's like, right. Don't dress us up like that, like that's not. Don't make us do. Please don't make me wear that. There were people who were A&R people who weren't music people. Right. Sony kind of people.
Right. Circling at that point.
Not to be mean to Sony. They make great headphones and microphones.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did I just ramble then? I don't know if I answered the question.
Absolutely. No. It's fascinating to know, because, were you guys able to make much of a living during that period of time? Like, what was it like financially for you around that period of time? Was it a time where there was a lot of money floating around because of songs that had done well, or was it hard? Like, what was the reality for you at that time?
Yeah, there was never a lot of money. I mean, there was enough. When we first started, we were all on the dole.
Yeah.
I think when we were making the video clip for Even When I'm Sleeping, we all had to leave at different times to go and put our doll form in. And so, but then we made enough really just to do it. But we were there wasn't a lot of money around, really.
Yeah.
It was all going back into
keeping the thing going.
Keeping the thing going. You know, we had crew, and we would always dress up every show. You know, we had candelabras and velvet and all kinds of we'd put on we'd kind of set the stage all the time. So we just kept putting it back in. But I think we just had like a weekly wage or something.
Right. But it's fascinating, isn't it? Because people perceive that when you write a song, like even when you're sleeping.
But I didn't write that song.
I know Dean did. Yeah, I know. But it's an interesting thing, the dynamics then within a band. How did that kind of, I mean, we don't have to talk about it, but how did it sort of work on a business level within the band? Was it the royalties shared? Was it Dean just took his royalties and you guys weren't part of that? Or how did it work practically for you guys?
Yeah, look, it was complicated. Dean ended up like later, I think, I can't quite work out when things happened, but later he ended up sharing a portion with me.
Right.
Because I'd been peddling, because I was such a part of it. And the other two at some point quit.
Right.
And then came back as like casual employees.
Right.
Because Dean and I were such kind of
the centre of the drive.
I think, and I'd be interested to hear what they would say about it, but I think it was, I don't know. I don't want to talk for anybody else.
But it's an interesting dynamic for bands. It's something that artists don't like talking about it, but it's a real thing. It's a real thing that happens for bands to work out how to navigate through those things together and work out what is this thing about songwriting royalties and how is that different to the contribution as a singer or the contribution as the bass player or whatever it is.
It's a very nebulous kind of area, and there aren't enough conversations about it, perhaps. But and suffice to say that there wasn't a lot of money around for me. Anyway, I don't know.
And were they conversations that you guys actually had, or did everyone just shy off the business? Because it's an interesting thing that for a lot of bands and artists, they don't want to talk about it, particularly in the early stages.
Yeah.
And then things happen and it becomes more awkward and difficult,
Yeah, well, I think kind of as we got... we had a beautiful manager who helped us navigate the business thing. So he encouraged us to have kind of certain... if not contracts, then agreements. And I can't remember kind of how that was all worked out.
It's a big thing about mentoring and mentors in your life, whether managers or other artists. We were very fortunate to have Greg Arnold, who sort of mentored us through that whole stuff to do with royalties and how to approach that, to understand things from his journey. Yeah. And he wrote a master's paper on it actually, which was really helpful at those formative stages when we were kind of navigating it through. Yeah, but it's definitely one of those things people don't really want to talk about.
No, that's right. And I still, don't. I don't.
Well, they're strange bedfellows, commerce and art together, aren't they, sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, it should... I'm a little bit better at it than I was, but I think it's also the thing is because, and which is why musicians have been exploited for so long, is because... whereas if I would go and work in an office or something, for example, you kind of know at the end of the day that you're going to get paid, and, it works quite quickly that way. Like, you'll get paid a few days, a week later or something. But with music, it's always so, there's never really like an hourly rate or anything like that. So for the most part, you're just so used to just doing it without any thought about the commerce of it.
Yes. Yeah.
And then...
It's a strange concept. We were talking about it today. I remember the first time we used to get $500 for as a baby band, as a gig. I remember the first time we got $2,000. I just think, whoa, someone's paid us $2,000. It's like highway robbery. And then your fee goes up to $6,000 and then goes up to $8,000, and you kind of almost can't believe it. But of course you should be getting paid because it's huge amounts of time and energy and effort that goes into it. But because it starts from a place of passion. Yeah. And love.
That's right.
That it's a tricky thing to kind of navigate.
It is so tricky.
It's important. I think it's an important thing for artists to talk about it with each other, and for us to kind of work out how to find that balancing act in our lives to make the rest of our lives work.
Yeah.
You know, because the starving artist.
I mean, even
concept,
still now though, like, I mean, in lots of ways, I mean, I've been playing music for, I don't even know how to add it up, but like, what is it, 30 years or more? 30 something years. And in lots of ways, I still feel like it's exactly the same. Like there's no like business model now that I apply or business, you know, acumen even.
Yeah.
It's all just really kind of like, do I want to do this? Do I want to do it? And then if I do, what will make me feel like I'm valued if I do it? I mean, I still just kind of make decisions
from the gut on that.
Yeah, like
that is an important thing, isn't it? You know?
Like, thank you.
Yeah,
So don't follow me is what I'm basically saying. Like, do not follow the way that I've navigated my way through this.
Kids. I think there's an American artist who's at "Don't Follow Me, I'm Lost" or something like that. This one of he had this documentary about, you know, we all look to artists, you know, for guidance, and he said, you know, don't follow me, I'm lost.
Yeah,
you know, it's
totally.
We're all kind of navigating to try and work it through and how to make it work, you know, and trying to make it work at different stages of your career too. You know, you have people see these peaks, but they don't see the full ebbs and flows of a career.
No,
and a lifelong career like you've had, you know, making those moments work across the long stretch of time.
Yeah, I think it's just been, well, for me, I've never really had a long-term plan or a vision or a 5-year plan or even like a 1-year plan. And for a long time I felt really kind of ashamed of that and like I was a loser for not being able to do that. But as it turns out, it's kind of worked out okay for me. Again, don't you know, follow my lead because you know, I don't own.
But people don't need to follow your lead. I mean, the truth is, you've lived your life and you've lived your creative journey, and it's that thing that you were saying. Actually, looking at the arch of your career, you're starting to recognise, oh, well, that record was more beautiful than I recognised it at the time because it was coloured, and you know, there are these different moments. We don't always realise where the peaks are in our careers when we're actually in them.
No, that's right.
You know.
Yeah. I just realise it's just a day-to-day kind of operation, really. Like, what's the next thing that will feel good?
So after Leonardo's Bride, you started. Did you take much time off at the end of that before you were doing some things with Paul Mac and you did some solo things and things like that?
Yeah, I had to kind of end the band because I was so unwell. So I didn't quite know what to do then because I didn't know what was possible. But I was invited by Paul Mac to be a part of his record, and that was a beautiful thing to do because it was all care but zero responsibility, and he was a great musician and new kind of ally and musical partner, and that was really beautiful. And he had a lot of kind of energy and brought in a whole group of people. So we toured, but again, you know, I remember arriving in, everywhere basically, and I would just have to, you know, some new town like where we were, and all I could do was lie across the back seat. I was very unwell at that point with chronic fatigue. So I had like this much energy, and it was I'd just do a show, and then that would be it. And then I would drive everybody to a nightclub after the show and go home, and then they'd all party all night, and then we'd meet in the foyer the next day. But that was really nice because it was it was keeping me like employed and doing something that I thought was radically different from me. And, you know, now I could listen to those songs that I did with Paul Mac next to all of my songs that I thought was, you know, so varied, and they all just sound like Abby singing.
That's right, isn't it? It's like, that connection point is the vocal, really. And we often think, I'm doing radically different things
right.
here.
It's like, it's just another song that he's singing.
Yeah, that's so true, isn't it? Oh, my God.
But so that was that chapter, and that was just beautiful. And then we did another record after that as well. So that.
And then how long after that did you move into solo work? Because that's when you would have, I guess, started writing.
Yeah, that's when I started writing. So I started writing. Yeah, for kind of soon after Leonardo's Bride ended. Okay. I started writing.
That's so wild. Yeah. So all through that period, there was no writing. You were just really started focusing on writing after Leonardo's Bride.
Yeah, that's when I focused. I mean, I did a little bit, but it always felt, I don't know, not like maybe not even welcome. It wasn't that Dean discouraged it, but for whatever reason, there wasn't really an opening for me.
Right.
There, and I didn't have the confidence, so I didn't again kind of push that.
So how many years would it have been from the point of beginning to write to that first solo record coming out?
So I think the first solo record came out in 2006 or something, or 7, and Leonardo's Bride broke up in 2001.
Okay, so 5 years.
So 5 years and doing the Paul Mac stuff, also being not very well, so I was pretty much just concentrating on trying to get well. I mean, for a large part of my life, it's taken up a large percentage of my energy and attention, just trying to be well.
It took me 4 years to write. Really, our first Giving Girl record took a long time. It was sort of kind of trying to find myself, and I went through a big process of doing that. It was this long journey that kind of took to do that. So I always think there's something about this 3 to 4 year cycles seems to take for meaningful work. Sometimes not always. I mean, some people are just prolific, obviously, like Dean, and they just roll it through. But for me, it's sort of been a slower process, and certainly at those early stages when you're trying to find your confidence for your own voice and what you're doing.
Yeah, I understand. It doesn't. I'm not a kind of prolific artist. I do things kind of pretty slowly.
Yeah. Because it's interesting, then we move into the second solo record, which you did with Brad Jones, which is someone that I've worked with a lot in my career, is incredible, amazing.
What records have you done with him?
Brad has worked on every record.
Really?
So he mixed the first 2 albums, and the third one he came out here and he produced it, and we recorded it, and then I finished it in Nashville with him.
Oh, wow.
But he's one of those guys where even when he's mixing, he's adding, and it's not just a mixing kind of thing. He's always been a kind of a collaborator.
How did you find him?
Just incredible, very gentle.
No, like literally, like how did
I find him? Oh, we were we had our first single mixed by this guy called Adrian Bushby in the UK, who had sort of found us, and he did it for us before he worked on a Foo Fighters record. It was this crazy story that happened, but basically Adrian and he was interested in mixing the rest of the record, and then he had a child and it just didn't work out with timing. The Foo Fighters record went too long and all these sort of things happened. And we were trying to work it out, and then I think we'd heard maybe he'd worked on the Bob Evans record and he'd done stuff with Josh Rouse and other artists, and we liked it. And Greg, our producer, happened to be in Nashville at the time when we were kind of working on things, and he showed Brad, and Brad was like, I really like this, so I'd love to be involved somehow. And then stars aligned. And the funny thing is that it's an interesting thing about how life unravels, but I just think Brad was the exact person to work on that record. What he brought to it really is what made it what it was in the end, So Adrian was amazing for that first single, but I think we needed Brad.
Yeah, he's incredible. I mean, I loved working with him too, yeah.
But we've always sort of worked with teams, worked with Nick Huggins and lots of different people that we've loved, and it's sort of I've always sort of approached making records as a collaborative idea, that it's a combination of people together, like a team, with Greg and Nick and, you know, lots of different people to bring it in. And then Brad would always be our end guy. And then we sort of brought him in early stages. And then now, as I'm sort of working on more solo things, we're sort of going back to a backwards, forwards kind of process. We're spending a bit of time in Nashville and spending a bit of time back at home and working with Nick and working with Brad more like a team. So
how delicious.
Yeah, it's been really life-giving spending time with Brad and Nick over the last 12 months working on this record. So yeah,
that's so great, isn't it? I mean, I remember when I made my record with Brad and went to Nashville and kind of took this wild leap of faith, because I'm so particular about who I kind of hang out with and work with, particularly, you know, men. Not because I don't love men, but sometimes working with men has, you know, can be tricky. You know, if they don't want, like some men don't like women, like having a strong voice. But he was just a dream, you know, from the word go. And just being able to actually like be in a studio for, I think we had 10 days or something or other, but I was like, wow, this is just the greatest, being able to just make music, like, and do nothing else other than make music. And he was just a champion, just skidding from room to room, like working so fast in his socks. Oh, yeah. I remember at the end I gave him a box of socks because he was always skidding around in his fancy socks.
And he's just that whole... I've never met anyone like him with his musicality. He's just really just off the charts.
Yeah, and so intuitive and just, it was amazing.
And humble in it too, and open. Yeah,
totally. And if ever I went, oh, no, that's not what I mean, there's never a moment of restriction or...
I think that's his superpower, actually, you know, which is an interesting thing, because I wanted to ask you this... what have you learnt from how to collaborate? Because you've had lots of collaborations over the years, you know, from like Leonardo's Bride through to Paul Mac to Baby Alou, you know, and to your solo work with producers. What have you learned about collaboration, and what do you sort of look for in a collaborator?
I suppose, I mean, these days... Well, really, since Leonardo's Bride, I was just like, I never want to work with anybody that I don't like or feel comfortable with. It's just like, from now on, life is just about working with people that I like. There's no reason for me to ever choose to work with someone who I don't like that. That was pretty easy. But it is interesting collaborating and making... music with people. I suppose I've got like I kind of know what I like, and I love input, but usually if it's my record, then I've got somewhat of a vision for it, and particularly like a sonic palette of sounds that I like, which is why I went to Nashville, because I heard the records that Brad Jones made. And I went, I love his sonic palette, so we're not going to have any kind of problem about sounds. Yep. And that's kind of the hardest thing to even explain to someone, like why you like a certain snare drum sound. Like you just want somebody who's already, that language is already sorted. Yeah. So that's why I loved working with him. But it is, I mean, I forget because I haven't kind of made a record in a few years. But yeah, it can be really challenging. I remember actually mixing my first record with Paul McKercher, and at the end, you know, at the end, I remember him saying to me, well done, like you managed to make the record that you want without upsetting people. Like, I remember him saying this, Claire, you've somehow managed to kind of like get what you want and still kind of like not have upset too many people. I can't remember quite the reason why that.
Well, I think that's a deep skill as a collaborator,
right? You know? There is a lot of kind of like shape shifting and yielding, but still kind of trying to, like, it is a thing, and yeah. Choosing your battles, I suppose.
Yeah. So, you know, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because that, just to go back to that record with Brad, I know he didn't specifically work on this song, but, you know, we all have these different sort of ebbs in our creative life. We, you know, have, you know, ups and downs, and, you know, trying to find ways to push through those to find our second act kind of thing, you know. And on that second record, it's Give Me Love. It's such an amazing song. It just feels like an artist at their full height and their power.
Does it?
As a writer and as a singer, it's just incredible.
Thank you.
And to be at that point in your career, to be delivering material of that calibre is pretty inspiring.
Thank you.
How did you find your way into the writing, and have you had those ebbs yourself creatively?
So
and,
many.
and how do you move through them? How do you move through those when you're in them? Are there things you do?
Look, I've had so many ebbs and flows. I've never been one of these kind of consistent anything. But with that song, it was a poem. Like, not all of my songs. A lot of my songs would generally start with the music, and then the very difficult act of trying to make the words kind of yield to the music. And this was one of those ones where I just wrote the words first, and then putting the music to it was just kind of easy, because it's easier, in fact, to make the music yield to the words that you've kind of spent a long time crafting,
right,
than the other way around. I don't know why I don't always write like that. Well,
it's an interesting point, because there's a deep freedom in that song where you can feel the lyric and the vocal just as the centre.
Right.
And everything else to it. So it's an interesting idea around that for yourself. So have there been particular techniques you've had to try and push your way through it with your writing, or, you know, if you're having in a slump, is there things that you do to try and help you to move through those points? Is it a daily practice? What is it for you?
Look, I've had kind of an interesting time creatively over the last like five or 6 years or something. I've been making Baby and Lulu records, my French band. But I've had like more health issues that have kind of beset me. About 7 years ago, I all of a sudden kind of had a series of I think maybe because I've had this autoimmune stuff, it's just, you know, every kind of decade it just kind of comes into a different organ network. And so I had really bad sinusitis and asthma, things that I'd never had previously. And so singing became really, really hard. And I also developed all of these allergies, so that I couldn't sleep for like a good couple of years. Because it affected my food. All these random foods affected my central nervous system and were like neurotoxins, and so I was really like quite a mess. And so, and a lot of brain fog, and so I really felt like it was all over for me, because I actually thought I was dying. And and certainly singing, like I was doing it with Baby and Lulu, but it was really hard. And fortunately they're an extraordinary bunch of musicians, so the pressure wasn't as high. But yeah, I really was in a pit of despair. And so I stopped writing. Like, I used to journal, as I said, all the time, but I thought after a while I need to just kind of try and change my headspace somehow. And I didn't want to keep writing pain. Right. And so I thought if I stop writing, maybe the pain will stop. Because, you know, I realised I didn't want to kind of oxygenate. Like, I was just kind of writing what was happening for me, which was kind of existentially dark and without a lot of kind of skylights. And so I thought if I stop writing, maybe I will stop fueling that feeling. And so I started a whole new kind of way of thinking from that point. So initially that was the first step, just stop writing.
Right.
Just see what happens then. And then I gradually started finding other ways of reorienting my brain and making new kind of neural pathways that were also about de-emphasizing anything that was going wrong and just kind of trying to focus on the things that I loved and the things that were satisfying at least. And so then I'd just have these morning routines of just kind of meditating and trying to gather things that I was happy about, and over time I've totally changed my whole kind of
amazing
vista and feeling about the world, and it's a daily thing, and it's been magnificent, and it really has actually worked in order, like the de-emphasizing the so I'm feeling like a lot better, and I'm only now starting to write again because I'd abandoned it, and but I'm kind of calibrating it in a different way now. So I'm not just kind of chronicling unwanted things. Instead, I'm kind of just trying to write from this new place. And so it's quite a new, I don't know what's to become of that, and whether it'll be songs or, you know, like, I mean, I went to Bali for a month and I just wrote a haiku every day. Just to, you know, one was like low pressure here, one haiku a day. And so, yeah, who knows?
So, you know, I guess at the very start of your career, you have this idea of what success is. I'd be curious to know what you thought success was as a young artist, as a baby Dobson, and how you see success now. You know, deeper in your career. What does success look like for you now?
I don't know if I really had a great idea about what I thought success might be.
Is that because you found yourself in it and it was just happening? Because it didn't start as a dream for you, right? It wasn't like you always dreamed to be this famous singer.
No.
You sort of found your way there.
No, I just kind of was tagging along. It was kind of Dean's dream.
Right.
Initially, and I was just kind of tagging along, just going, "Oh, this is fun." Like, well, for now, like, let's go. This is me smoking, by the way. It wasn't until that I saw that healer lady, and she suggested I kind of bring my spirit into it, that all of a sudden I started to inhabit what I was doing, and realised kind of the power of it in my own just way, not in an exerting way. But but I think once I really did start. Well, I think once, Even When I'm Sleeping was a successful song, and that I'd done this kind of intentional kind of energy work for it. That was like a beautiful moment of kind of going, oh wow, this stuff is really powerful and magic. You know, it's like this great mystery that I've kind of like had a part in harnessing. So that felt pretty great. Like it wasn't a song that, I remember at the time, Even When I'm Sleeping was a hit, there was this song by Kelis, because called I Hate You So Much Right Now.
Oh, yeah.
At the same time. And
Yeah.
I remember just thinking, I'm so glad that I don't have to sing that 4 times a day at radio. Like, what a horrible thing.
Yes.
So that felt like success, that kind of experiment had worked. And it felt like success when I made my first solo album. That felt like, I think more than success, it's actually just satisfaction.
But see, this is an interesting thing, because even just the way you're talking about it, for so many people it's being signed to a major label and having a hit song. That's how they may describe it.
Right.
But the fact that you described it as that when you found connection through the song and you felt like you connected deeply to something, that was successful to you, is it's a sort of a refreshing difference to what a young person would think success is. I mean, I guess by that point you were 26, is that right? 27. So maybe it's like having a bit more maturity at that point to recognise it. But now, when you look back across your career and you think about today, what is being a successful artist to you? What does it mean to you now? Success is probably the wrong word.
Yeah, because not everyone would, I don't own my own house, so not everyone would call me a success.
Yeah. It all depends on how do you define it?
Yeah.
Because for some people, it's just the ability to continue to make work.
Yes, that's right.
And or whatever it means, to you.
I think it's look. The first thing I was going to say was that I think, looking back, I feel like maybe what I'm probably successful at is that I never lied. Like, I never tried to sell anyone something that my heart wasn't in. Like, I never kind of pretended or agreed to do something that my heart wasn't in, or like, I've stayed kind of pretty true to myself the whole way through.
That's awesome.
So that feels kind of pretty good, and maybe why I'm still here. I don't know.
Yep.
And I've forgotten what they are.
Because I think people can smell it. They can smell when things aren't right.
Right.
Or like something's off. People kind of can, the public, I mean, it's.
I think I'm only actually very good. People ask me to sing on their records a bit, and I mostly say no, because if I don't think, because I'm not like a technically amazing singer, so I think I'm actually only very good if my heart's in it. If my heart's not in it, I'm actually not that great a singer. So I think that's also part of it. It's like knowing what your wheelhouse is.
Well, I think a lot of people find that very illuminating that you think that, because, I mean, to me, you're one of the greatest singers in the country.
Well, thank you.
So, it's reflective of probably, as you said, why you are where you are, because of what drives you to do the things that you do, and
not that I know where I am. Like, where am I other than here with you? I'm certainly not in, on the radar of anybody.
Yeah. I think you're on the radar of more people than you think.
Anyway, that doesn't matter.
So if you were to give some advice to a young artist that was sort of emerging now, what would that advice be, do you think?
Oh, I kind of feel sorry for young artists. Like, it feels like so much pressure for them to, like, keep putting out new material and keep, like, being on social media, keep having a front and keep producing and keep having, likes and things like that. I think that would be so tricky. But like artists forever, they find, somehow they find a way. If you want to do it, it's like water, it will find its way. So if you want to make something and create and put it out, it'll find its way. I don't know what advice I would give them. I don't know what I could tell them other than to make what you want. Never kind of make what you think the audience wants or the market wants. Like, that's just a bad idea. Just make what you love, and if you don't love it, don't put it out. If you don't kind of give yourself kind of goosebumps or whatever your equivalent is, like, don't put it out. Like, do what you love, because I don't know, like that's the whole thing. Like,
I think that's beautiful advice. I think that's the heart of it right there. You know, is to make work that resonates with you first, and then from that place
about it.
From that place, there, other people will find it.
Yeah.
But it's a delusion to just be pushing it out for what you think people want.
That's right.
It's always been a dangerous place to enter into. The concept of I've got to write a single or something.
Yeah.
You get into the bandwagon of things happening. And that's a dangerous territory to get into.
Yeah. Then you're kind of trying to copy somebody else, and then you're already second rate. Like, yeah. But I mean, I would suggest maybe to other, but not just singers, but to perform, like, experiment with bringing your spirit into it. Like that, the microphone picks up everything. Do you know the pauses? Like, I'm also, when I record vocals, like a lot of modern engineers cut out all the breaths and all the spaces, and I'm like, those spaces and breaths are intentional. I've still got energy coming out in those places. Like be intentional, and
and hold the magic.
Hold the magic, be the magician that you are.
Abby, such a beautiful pleasure to have you here in the Fisherman's Shed.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming along.
What a pleasure, Mark.
Great. So amazing, Abby. Oh my God.
Thank you.
What a conversation.
Oh, really?
You're amazing.
Thank you.